Think we lost all, but who will take the fall? Who will win it all? You know the cost, still you go through walls. Keep on acting small.
Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome. My name is Christine. Today I'm going to show you how I edit my Instagram photos. If you have seen some of my recent videos, I just uploaded a video on how I take my own photos at home. So if you haven't seen that yet, I'll go ahead and link it above and below. I also shared a video on how to pose. If you're ever taking photos and you feel like you look super awkward, you don't really know what to do with your hands or how to pose, that is a great posing video, and I show you all the beginner basics and some of my favorite poses that I love to do for standing and sitting photos. So if you haven't seen that either, I'll go ahead and link it above and below. Today's video is kind of like the third piece to that, to getting like the perfect Instagram photo. If you guys aren't aware, I am a full-time content creator, so making videos here on YouTube and on Instagram is my full-time job. Also, before we go ahead and dive into the tutorial, this hoodie is from Talentless. I love it, and this is actually the men's hoodie. I'm going to show you guys how I edit both my iPhone photos and my camera photos. Most of the photos on my feed I take with my camera. I'm also going to show you some of my favorite photo editing apps as well. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So this is my phone. I have the iPhone 11 Max. It is my favorite, and I'm going to walk you through first how I edit my iPhone pictures. These are some of the photo editing apps that I love. You can go ahead and screenshot this if you want. R&I Films is going to be the first app that I show you. It's a super easy to use app to edit your photos, and this is what I used to primarily use before I discovered Lightroom. Lightroom is honestly a little bit more advanced, but I think once you learn it, there's so much more you can do with your photos. So I do prefer Lightroom, but for beginners, I think R&I Films is a great tool. In here, you will find a lot of different filters, and filters are a great thing to use, especially if you want your feed to look a little bit more cohesive. There's also like premium filters that you can buy or earn or whatever, but I don't really mess with those. My personal favorite is under the vintage folder, and Kodachrome 50s is kind of like my go-to filter that I use in this app. I love the tones in it. So once you select the filter that you like, if you hit the little setting button, there is a little strength tab, and this is great also because you can apply the same filter to different types of photos and tone them accordingly. So I normally like my photos to look really white and bright, so I'm going to take up the brightness to about 33. Then I will scroll over. I don't usually touch any of the other settings. For the shadows, I normally like to brighten it up even more. That just makes any of the dark areas or the shadows look a little bit more lit up. And then I will take the highlights down just a little bit, and that way the photo doesn't look too washed out. Especially if I brighten the photo a lot, I like to also tweak the highlights. That just helps to kind of keep the photo looking a little bit more balanced. Also, another weird thing about this app, it doesn't allow you to have any settings below 6, so that is kind of the threshold. If you set it below that, it's going to automatically reset to 0. So it's just a minor thing, but it just doesn't give you as much control over your photos. And then I will go into the pre and post warmth. Honestly, I don't know the difference between both of these. I'll kind of just play with both of them and try to see what I like more. I prefer my photos just to have a hint of warmth to them. And then going into pre and post tint, these ones kind of determine if your photo is green or purple. I prefer my photos to lean a little bit more on the purple side. And then there's all these other controls. If you want a little fade action or if you want some dust, you can totally add that. But I don't, just because I prefer a more clean, professional looking photo. Once I'm happy with the edits, I will go ahead and hit this little save button to camera roll. And then the cool thing about this app is you can actually apply that same edit to multiple photos. So if you have a similar photo that you want to use and kind of post it as like a carousel, you can hit the little back button and upload it. And then there's a little pop-up that asks if you want to use the last edits. And that way, all of the edits that we did to the last photo, it'll apply to the next photo that we upload. So I think this is a really great tool. Just to show you, I'm going to apply the same edit to a different photo, and obviously, as you can see, it doesn't work out just because the lighting's totally different. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit cancel and edit this photo the same way that I did the other one. I actually posted the image as is and I didn't Facetune it or anything, but say it was a photo for a campaign or I just had like a really bad blemish that I wanted to kind of get rid of. I love Facetune 2. I prefer that one over Facetune 1 just because I think Facetune 2 gives you a little bit more control with your editing and the strength of the tools that you use. So I do think that this one is worth paying for. I will go ahead and use the Retouch and Smooth tool. This time I'm just going to use it as kind of like a spot concealer. Anywhere where I have like blemishes and stuff like that, I will kind of run my finger over. Like I said, I usually like to upload my photos not Facetuned and kind of leave my skin as is. This is just to show you, just in case you were interested. I never leave the smooth tool at 100% just because I feel like it looks super unnatural, so I'll kind of drag it down a little bit. Next, I'm gonna do my mustache area just because sometimes I have a little bit of peach fuzz. I like to use a smooth tool over that area, bring down the smoothness super low just so that we get a kind of light smoothing, nothing crazy. Then I love the whiten tool to kind of brighten up the whites of my eyes. If I really wanted to put in the effort for something like this, I think it's kind of like a quick and pretty natural looking edit, but has a really striking effect. And then there's also a little eraser so you can refine the areas that you are editing. So here you can see my eyes look so much more brighter and wider. Then the last thing I will do is I will actually use the details tool, and this helps to kind of emphasize any area that we want. So I usually like to do like my eyeshadow, eyeliner, lashes, sometimes my eyeballs if I want them to pop. I'm super happy with the way that that looks. So I actually posted that selfie in part of a carousel situation. How I make these collages is an app called Storylux. I love this app. It has a lot of really cute frames, or if I want to organize like a series of photos in kind of an interesting way. There's so many different templates in here. It's a super easy to use app as well, which I really like. So I'm just going to show you this one. If you wanted to make a collage that you can upload to Instagram, there's a little ratio tool in the top left corner. You just select 4 or 5. When you upload to Instagram, it's going to crop it even more. So just kind of keep that in mind, but it kind of gives you an idea of where your picture is going to be cropped when you upload it to Instagram. Storylux is a great tool. I always get so many questions about it, and there's a lot of like premium templates that you can use as well, but I just usually use the free ones. Now I'm going to show you Lightroom. This is something that you really have to play with a lot to learn, but like I said, once you learn it, your photo game is gonna be like on another level. And I just edit all of my photos in Lightroom, mainly on my computer. There's just so much that you can do with the photos. I'm gonna go ahead and put on screen some before and afters of some photos that I edited in Lightroom. I primarily upload photos that I take with my camera, but again, if you're just using iPhone photos, there's nothing wrong with that. So here we have that same photo, and I'm gonna edit it using Lightroom to kind of show you how much more we can do with this photo. The one great tool about Lightroom is you can make your own presets. So kind of how R&I Films had its own filters and stuff like that, you can make your own on Lightroom, especially if you start developing like a style. If you go on my Instagram feed, a lot of my photos kind of have the same vibe, and by using the same type of edits, it kind of helps my feed to look a little bit more cohesive and put together. First things first, we're gonna play with the colors and kind of figure out what we like for our editing style. I normally like to take the vibrance down to like -10 or 11, and then the saturation down, and that just allows me to play with the colors. Next, I'm going to hit this little mix button, and here you can see all the colors in the spectrum, and you can tweak the saturation, how bright it is, the hue, and there's just so much that you can do. I usually like to take the red and the oranges up a little bit to around 12 to 14, especially because that is usually like my skin tone, lip colors. So we do want that to pop a little bit. And then the trick for me to getting all of my photos looking really clean is to take the yellow super low, and that just makes the photo just look so much more white and bright, which I love. So taking down the yellows, the greens, and I'll kind of play with the blues and see how much it affects the photo. That is kind of how the colors look. I think it already helps the photo look a little bit more brighter and wider. I'm actually going to take the temperature up a little bit and kind of warm up the photo. photo, add a little bit more purple because I do like those tones. I'm happy with that. It's super subtle, but I think it is really pretty and kind of cleaner looking. We'll scroll back over to the presets button. In the top right, those three little dots, you can just tap that and there's a create preset tool and you can name it whatever you'd like. I'm just going to name it iPhone because this is an iPhone photo, and that way I know when I upload other iPhone photos, this is a filter that's made specifically for that. And you can go ahead and use that filter every time you have an iPhone photo, and that way it kind of just applies all of those same effects that we did earlier, kind of easy peasy. Now that we have our preset made, I'm actually going to go ahead and tweak some of the colors. Again, this is going to be kind of similar to what we used in R&I films. I'm going to bring up the exposure. I'm going to take up the shadow so it's not quite as dark. Whites and blacks you can kind of just tweak. I turned down the blacks just because I wanted my hair to look a little bit more deeper. And then the thing about Lightroom that makes it so special to me is this curve button. It took me a while to learn, but now this is like one of my favorite edits to use because it just gives my photos such a unique look. So what I'll do is I'll add 3 different points. That just kind of gives me some reference point. The middle one does the contrast of the midtones. The top one does the contrast of the highlights. The bottom half controls the contrast for some of the darker tones. A curve like this is going to bring up the contrast for the highlights and up the contrast for the darkness. So you kind of just have to play around with it. I usually do a curve something like this because it just makes my skin pop. The little Y button in the bottom right also controls some more of the curves. Again, it does seem complex, but it just gives you so much more flexibility that it makes a photo look amazing. So I actually ended up really liking the way that I had edited this, so I wanted to save it as another preset, so I saved this as iPhone 2. That is a little before and after, nothing crazy, but I do think that it makes for a really striking image and something that doesn't look too over edited, you know what I mean? So I'm actually going to put on the screen the photo that I edited in R&I films versus the photo that I did in Lightrooms. I don't know, for some reason the Lightroom one just looks so much more cleaner to me, but it does take a little bit more work, so if you're willing to learn, I think it's a great tool. And using Lightroom just allows me to paste my edits onto a huge batch of photos, so Lightroom is super quick and efficient for me. So if you go to the original edited image, if you hit the 3 little dots in the right, there's a little pop-up that says copy settings. You want to tap that. Go back to the photo that we just uploaded. You can select it, and in the bottom right there's a little paste edits. You can obviously select more if you have more photos in that same set that you want to edit. So super easy to do. Obviously all these photos are from a different day, lighting's different, so the edit's not going to work for them, but just showing you that that is an option that you can have. Next, I'm going to show you a photo that I took on my camera. Most of my photos I take horizontally just because my camera is just so much more sturdier on my tripod when I have it horizontal, and usually I just go in afterwards and kind of crop it to fit for Instagrams. It's just what I've always done. This is the original image. When I shoot on camera, I always use raw photos. Photographers will know raw is kind of like the highest file that you can save your images, and this way I just think there's so much more range that you can do with editing. If I had taken this photo on my iPhone, I would not be able to edit it as much as I can now since it is a raw image. There's a lot more that I can do. Anyways, when I go in and crop my image, you want to crop it to the 4:3 ratio, and then there's a little rotate button in the top left to kind of switch to the photo layout that we want. I went ahead and used one of the presets that we made earlier. I decided that I was just going to go ahead and tweak it from here because I just think it's a little bit easier from editing it from scratch, if that makes sense. Going into the colors, just kind of tweak some of that. This luminance tool you haven't seen me use yet, but this is the tool that I use a lot, especially if a photo is really bright and washed out. Bringing down the luminance of certain colors really helps to make them pop, and I'm just kind of playing around with all of the other colors and seeing if they need any changes made. Pretty happy with that. We're gonna go into our light settings and turn the highlights way low, and here you can see how much of a difference that makes. Playing with the highlights and shadows is one of my favorite tools, and if you are to take anything away from this editing lesson, I highly recommend playing around with the highlights and shadows tool. It can make your photos look amazing. I'm just gonna tweak some of the settings here to kind of make the photo a little bit more balanced. Finally, I'm super happy with the way that that photo looks. You'll probably be seeing it on my Instagram soon. So once I'm done with the photo, there's a little save button in the top middle right. This photo shoot in Brandon's car, I actually love the way that this turned out, and Foot Locker actually reposted me as well, which is super cool. This kind of has a moodier edit, so I'm going to show you how I kind of get that effect. I edit this photo the same way that I did all of the other ones, but the trick here is to play with the curves. That's kind of how you get like this matte edit, which kind of translates to a little bit of a moodier edit. So here you can see my 3 little points that I made, but the last point at the bottom, which I didn't even touch for all of the other photos, I will actually bring up from the corner, and here you can see that just makes the photo look so much more matte. Some editing apps allow you to do this, but this is just how you do it in Lightroom, and I will just bring it up just a smidge, and it automatically makes the photo so much more moodier. For this, I actually saved it as a preset as well. Anytime I had a type of photo that I wanted it to look a little bit more moodier, I will go ahead and just apply the preset and then kind of tweak it from there, and that is how I edit most of my photos. So that is the end of today's video. I hope you all found it helpful. I'll go ahead and link here some recent videos that will help you up your Instagram game, but if you guys don't already follow me on Instagram, make sure you do, because I'm super active on there in my Instagram stories as well. That is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.